Thanks for joining us for the panel today. It's called A Transformative Palate, Paleo, Ketogenic, Vegan, and Whole30. I'm Nancy King, and I'll be your moderator today. I have my own marketing company, A New View Marketing, and I'm a brand strategist. Now, today's panel is going to be less about the specifics of these diets or lifestyles that we've talked about in the title, and it's going to be more about how diet plays a role in our lifestyles. It's more than just satisfying our hunger. So I don't know about you, but I've always been a foodie, and I've always said to people, I live to eat. And you ever hear that? Do you eat to live or do you live to eat? Well, I have always said I eat to live, live to eat. But our panel here, the fantastic panel that they are, I would suggest that they might be saying that they eat to live. And that's really kind of an interesting change from it, because it used to be people thinking that, oh, you just will eat anything, but me, I don't. But it's just the opposite when I say it today, because now it's all about using food to really prolong your life and live a very healthy life. So it's very exciting. All of these panelists are really mission activists to influence the awareness of the foods we eat and its effect on generations now and to come, and also how it plays a role in not only our individual health, but in the health of the planet. So starting with Alchemia, would you please introduce yourself and tell the audience how you're involved in the health and wellness industry?
Yeah, my name is Alchemia Earth, and I'm actually a holistic wellness coach. My approach to lifestyle is mind, body, spirit, and that's really what holistic means, is including the whole. And so I do that through the tools of food, plant-based, raw in particular, fasting, and some of the other tools. Music is very transformational, so my whole area of work is transformation.
Great.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Itzhak Vida. I am a culinary climate action activist, producer, MC, and organic gardener. My whole style is using environmental hip-hop as a form of social change. I've recently been using the concept for, mostly in urban communities, but a lot of times I like to go and speak in different engagements where, settings like this. But the whole goal is the fact that I sit on two different nonprofits, one of them called Earth Guardians, another one is called Vida Earth Foundation, and the vibe is literally just using this as a tool to talk about agronomy, addressing food justice in communities where they're underprivileged.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is, hello? Okay. My name is Laura Kalea. I've spent my entire career in fitness and nutrition. I have my master's degree in functional medicine and clinical nutrition. And I've worked with all kinds of different people, from corporations to individuals, startups. And my most recent endeavor is a 60-day program, and it's gonna work with taking some biomarkers at first, and then also mindset, diet, and lifestyle. And for me, just fitness and wellness and nutrition has always just been something that's ingrained in me. And for me, taking this next step into this new endeavor means helping people who are kind of scared and stuck and just really don't know things about food or what functional medicine is. So I'm very excited to be here.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Weitzman. I'm a filmmaker. My recent films are Cancer Can Be Killed and Flipping the Script. And Cancer Can Be Killed is about a natural treatment for cancer right now is far more effective than the old traditional methods of chemo, radiation, and radical surgery. My wife, for example, had bladder cancer. She was told she had to remove her bladder, have her vagina cut in half, go through chemo and radiation, and she had a 50% chance of survival. So instead, we went to Germany. We treated it naturally with heat, ozone, and IV nutrients, and in 30 days, her cancer was completely gone. Then when we came back, the reality of how you keep cancer away launched us into the new research of how do you use nutrition to keep cancer away? And that's what got me started on my new mission.
That's really amazing. Okay, so part of the title of this particular seminar is a transformative palate. What does that mean, a transformative palate? Well, let's ask our panelists how they interpret that and what that means to them. And just jump in, anybody, to start.
For me, actually, the transformative palate began with my sugar addiction. I think we all can relate to that. And it was pretty severe. I mean, I'm making German chocolate cakes and consuming the whole cake by myself within a day. And, shout out to my cousin who's here who also has a sugar addiction. No, we all do. But so when I actually took myself off of refined sugar and was inspired to go raw and kind of reset myself, and then it was very interesting, the experience I had trying to reintroduce sugar back into my lifestyle and just to see if my palate had actually changed. And not only did my palate change, but my entire body. I could feel the sugar immediately when I consumed it. It was like a drug. And so it just took off from there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I definitely would say for me, it's been very transformational. I've been vegan, plant-based for about 18 years now, started at age 14. And it was really because of, Rastafarian music, at the same time being exposed to animal cruelty. So the style is definitely a transformative lifestyle. Like I like to use hip hop as a way to talk about regenerative agriculture, growing food in urban communities, and that style is what's opened me up into what I feel is mostly transformative. I think about building patience. A lot of times youth don't understand, what it takes to grow an onion, let alone the patience it takes to actually grow a potato, but they love French fries. So I'm all about normalizing the idea of sustainability through hip hop and making albums to do it, like the produce section.
Yeah, and I think that you had mentioned to me earlier when we spoke that you also felt that there were like political and emotional reasons for that you felt in transforming your palate. That was important to you.
Yeah, it definitely is. When I think about, there's an impact of communities of color who are underprivileged through the ideas of there's a main focus on police brutality as an environmental issue, but not the fast foods in the community, not the fact of lack of, cooperative economics and jobs that are healthy and around wellness. And that's what we do. We bring wellness-related, activities and workshops to communities, partnering with farmers markets to do these interactive culinary climate workshops called Recipes for Resistance, and also doing yoga and, juicing in communities where you don't really see much happening, but breakdancing is the best way to actually encourage young people to talk about holistic health, at the same time get them wired on some fresh juice as they're doing it.
I did see some of your videos, and I really enjoyed them. I was watching them online, and I thought these are really cool.
Yeah, I was hoping, if you get a chance, hashtag, look up plant-based records. We grow organic food and connect it to copper wiring and literally make beats with beats. So we use vegetables as a conductor for electricity to create, music with young people, at the same time encourage people to eat the food that they play with.
It's great.
I wanted to add that it's been really cool to take a group of people and teach them about a new kind of eating or lifestyle. And we did something about 45 days ago, and people were asking, like, okay, well, I've heard about vegetarianism and keto and plant-based, or what do I do? And so we let each person kind of pick a program, and they did it for 60 days. And what became transformative and really so fun to watch was how these people's lives changed. It became like, not only like, I'm gonna eat this food, but it was like, this is what we talk about at work, this is what we talk about at dinner. We travel differently, we meal prep. And then what really became transformative is watching these people, changes in their skin, weight loss. I've seen there was one family that were sugaraholics, like you said, and the boys were like 13 and 10. And watching these boys and their personalities change over these 60 days, the little one was probably 40 pounds overweight, and he lost the most weight. And now he says that he walks to school instead of taking the bus. So this one family went from kind of being like the fat family to like the healthy family. And I've just seen so many things through the years with just changing food and lifestyle, and it really makes a huge difference in somebody's entire demeanor. So that's been really fun to watch.
Great, thank you.
I think the transformation started for us when my wife came back from Germany, and after having this miraculous natural treatment heal her cancer, 3 months later, a tiny little polyp started growing in her bladder again, and we started asking the question, okay, how are we going to keep this away? So in our research, we found out about Otto Warburg, who won the Nobel Prize back in the 30s, who found out that no disease, not even cancer, can exist in an alkaline environment. So then the quest became, how do we create the alkaline environment in our bodies? And we did this through a plant-based diet. We did smoothies every day, just filled up the thing with fruits and vegetables. And lo and behold, the cancer didn't come back. So it was a study in and of itself, just in our own little family, that for my wife, the cancer didn't come back. For me, I had no more aches and pains. So the transformative work came just through that whole idea of an alkaline diet.
Can you give a couple examples of what an alkaline food would be?
Sure. So when you do a search on alkaline foods versus acidic foods are like meat, poultry, dairy, eggs. There's a number of other foods in that list, but the alkaline foods are like the fruits and vegetables. So you could get a test strip from Amazon and you can spit on it or pee on it. You can test your alkaline level in your body, and you can just look at your diet. And what we found is if I'm loading up so high on the fruits and vegetables, if I'm eating something acidic over here, it's not a problem if I'm outweighing it with all the alkaline foods. So you eventually want to get your alkaline level up between 6.5, 7.5. Once you're in that range, your body is going to be healing and it's going to be healthy.
Great, okay. Well, we don't live in the days of hunter-gatherers anymore. We live in a modern industrial society, and that's the way it is. So the question I have for the group is, can we really avoid these diseases or stop these diseases that are just part of this modern industrial society that we live in? Jump in, anybody.
I think it requires a shift in our perspective and our thinking. Yeah, it is a modern industrial society indeed, and there's a problem with how things are right now. The plastic epidemic, the chemicals in foods, the genetically modified foods, the pesticides being used. So it's an entire cycle that needs to be broken, and it starts with a mind state. A lot of it comes from convenience and things of that nature, but if we can just shift our perspective and understand that everything we consume, everything we think will reflect itself on a major scale on the planet, and then the microcosm of that is what happens in the body, you know?
It's definitely a big question when I think about redefining the image of wealth. Hip-hop definitely is a multi-billion-dollar industry that has, promoted sex, drugs, and violence for such a long time. I think the focus definitely needs to be shifted. And what I'm doing right now, a couple years ago, I dropped a music video. It's on YouTube. It's called Wheatgrass. The fact of a song, to just include the idea of sustainability around like plant-based medicines, I think it's important. These shifts are really shifting around the world. Like you can see people going towards the ideas of, limiting their plastic use, but at the same time wanting to include the ideas of holistic health. I think this is going to drive itself naturally into that direction, the same way we see with deforestation being an issue really started to come up to the ideas of the masses. So, yeah.
Hippocrates said that let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And I always tell people it's the exact opposite too. Food can be your poison. And I think that, when people come and see me at first and I can see that they're overweight and uncomfortable and tired and not sleeping and stressed out, they don't really like the question when I say, like, what have you done to kind of add to your situation? So it's kind of taking some responsibility. And when you catch these diseases early enough, especially obesity, type 2 diabetes, sleep disorders, heart disease, they can be reversed, but it's a mindset. And that's really what I'm working on so much nowadays is let your mind change your body. And I think that we all kind of have to go in and say, like, what am I doing or not doing? Because I know I travel a lot, and one of the things is when I'm in the airport, there are times that, like, I might grab, like, popcorn. Even if it's low-calorie, air-popped popcorn, it's still not something that I would eat at home. So part of this whole shift in changing disease is making choices before you walk out the door and what you're going to do different that day to kind of reverse the situation. But to answer the question very specifically, yes, absolutely, these lifestyle diseases can be changed, and we're changing them.
I
or
think-
helping change them.
I think for me, the two big things my wife and I are trying to overcome, and it takes a lot of work, I find, is how do you get food that hasn't been poisoned? And there's so many sources of poisoning for the food supply. And for us, it's come down to actually going to farmers markets and meeting the farmers and finding the farmers we can trust. And so we feel kind of bulletproof right now in terms of the food thing. And then the other toxins that we're trying to recover from are the medical toxins, because everything that a doctor treats a cancer patient with is toxic. And so we've had to kind of remove ourselves. And we found one urologist who's a Western medical urologist. We drive an hour and a half to see him because he's the only guy in a 100-mile radius that is open to using other things other than toxins. So my point is, yes, it is possible to get free of the toxins. It just takes a lot of work, I think.
All right, yeah, I'm sure that's true. So talking about keto, paleo, Whole30, all these different types of, you could call them diets, you could call them lifestyles, or both. How does one choose one over the other? What factors would cause a person to decide to do one versus the other?
You know, I have a good answer on that. I think a lot of it comes, you know, it could be religion, it could be family pressure. I've met so many people where one of the partners is a vegetarian, and 6 months later I find, you know, they come back to me and the other partner's a vegetarian too. So a lot of it is society, a lot of it is family, religion, social pressures. But I think I work a lot in the CrossFit community, and the coaches really push paleo. And so next thing you know is these guys are living this lifestyle. Their bodies, guys and girls, their bodies are changing. They're really into this CrossFit lifestyle, and they go from, I used to eat this, but now I'm totally paleo. And sometimes they don't even know why. But it's the community. And I love that aspect about fitness and nutrition, that, you know, one, you know, type of workout can gather a community, but sometimes that kind of community pressure is why we choose one food choice or another. The other thing I wanted to add is, like keto, for example. If you go on Instagram, every other person is talking about keto, and some of these people don't even really know what keto is or why, and there's a really wrong way to do keto. I did keto, and I did plant-based keto, and it was really hard, but I chose that partially because of some peer pressure from some coworkers, but I think there's a lot of reasons, but also our media kind of pushes what the coolest fad is in food right now.
Yeah, I see that happening a lot. I come from the hood. So, of course, I grew up eating regular old food. I mean, like corner store snacks. And a lot of times that, yeah, she laughing, right? Yeah, but at the same time, man, a lot of people in my community, they still do. So I use hip-hop as a form of, like, engaging. You know, hip-hop means higher inner peace, helping other people, also known as health inside people, health outside people, also known as the intelligent movement. To be hip and to hop is the movement. So if we go into that right direction, I mean, things are really being acknowledged. I mean, Rachel Ray pulled me up to come and talk about Make Fresh juice on the stage. So, like, I feel like people understand that you can definitely reach people with plant-based medicines. You just got to do it through arts. You know, like when I wrote a rap and I'm going in and, like, we're doing breakdancing events in greenhouses, getting people to come up there and just be present. You know, it's hot and they spin it on the floor and there's, like, aquaponics everywhere. But the whole conversation is the fact of talking about urban agriculture, talking about, really bringing that carbon sequestration out of the atmosphere so we can really talk about, organic gardening. And that conversation will open people up to, like, okay, what do I do with these vegetables? Oh, you got to eat it. You should juice it. You should steam it. You should dehydrate it. You should do something. We should make beats with it. And then that's the conversation that opens up. And at the same time, next thing you know, there's a TED Talk about it. We normalize the idea. If we can wear a hat backwards, then of course we can teach people how to grow food. And that's what I think hip hop can do.
Well, thinking about children and food, I'm sure it's universal that children they say children hate vegetables. I mean, growing up, you see in parents' magazines ways to sneak vegetables into your children, and they put them in little French fry boxes and make them look like little French fries and doing fun things with them. Are you finding that with the children you work with and the programs you work with, that you're still dealing with that issue?
Never. Yo, I show up with a boombox and a blender, and we literally, like, I got
you're
kids
blending
eating
them. You're blending them then.
Yo, but no, but not just that. Like, I got kids eating handfuls of Sprouts. You know, like, we literally have a campaign called Sprout That Life, just like Bout That Life, but it's Sprout That Life. Like, we're literally transforming the language in hip-hop. Me and my wife are literally going into these schools and activating young people and adults with this intergenerational dialogue of how to combat climate change through plant-based medicines. It's for
Great,
real.
great.
A lot of the patients that are getting treated for cancer naturally, when they come out of their treatment, if they came in with heart disease and diabetes, those are gone also. So in terms of the recovery from those diseases, the number one thing is to get rid of refined sugar. There's about 20 times more receptors on a cancer cell for sugar than there are on a normal cell. So if you just do that one thing and eliminate sugar from the diet, it heals so many diseases. So when you look at ketogenic, paleo, some of these diets, a lot of times people are choosing them because they're wanting to get rid of more sugars in their diet, and they're concerned about carbs like potatoes and rice, and concerned that those are going to turn into sugars, and they want to eliminate those, so they'll do a ketogenic diet. What we found is that long term, maybe that's not the best solution, is to just go paleo or to just go keto, because we need all the micronutrients that are everywhere. And so short term, it may make sense to take one of these diets to, fix a certain thing in your body. But long term, it just seems like alkaline diet, getting the micronutrients from as many sources as you can, seems to be the best answer.
Right. Well, I know one thing. I've got really high cholesterol, and I inherited it from my dad. I mean, really high. I'm like at 240, 280. Can you imagine that? And I run and I do all these things, but I can't help that. And I watch my keto friends putting butter in their coffee, and I'm like, dude, I can't do that. I've been trying to stay away from dairy and, some of the fats because of that, cheeses and things. And so the question really is, don't you really have to know your own unique biomarkers and what is right for your body too? How do you take that into account, right?
Yeah, I'd love to answer that one. I worked for a German company for 2 years, and they didn't end up launching in the United States, but what they were was a home-based blood testing biomarker test that you could take at home that would tell you any of your basics, from your vitamin D to your cholesterol levels to your metabolism and everything in between. And I learned so much during that time, but what's so interesting about it is how easy it is for us to test our biomarkers. It's saliva, it's blood, you can do it at home. Your doctor will give you any of these measurements, but before I change someone will come to me and say, I want to be a vegetarian. Awesome, you know what I mean? Let's get your blood work first, because you don't know what you come with. So a couple examples for myself, I'm genetically predisposition to obesity. So the average person has about a 59% chance of becoming obese if they lived a completely sedentary lifestyle and ate terribly. I have a 72% chance. I'm obviously not obese, but Nancy, like you, I also have a very high propensity to high cholesterol. My dad and all my brothers have high blood pressure, but I've changed all of my measurements through diet and lifestyle. So I, like you, Nancy, I can't do, if I was a meat eater, I couldn't do keto in the regular way because those saturated fats would send my cholesterol through the roof. Now, if somebody does eat meat and they know their biomarkers, we're expecting that their cholesterol is going to go up, but it would come down because your body's burning ketones instead of glucose. But just knowing that, I think everybody should know that whenever they're making any lifestyle change.
Right, that's great.
I just want to mention the biomarkers we look at with my wife and I is we go to our urologist and get a blood and urine test, and the 4 biomarkers we're looking at are micronutrients, toxins, metals, and hormones. And with the micronutrients, we found out that my wife was missing chromium and vitamin A. She was loaded with metals. We had to detox her. And the toxins also, we had to get those out of her body. And then finally, her hormones were out of balance. My hormones were out of balance. So we were able to figure out through that the supplements we could take to figure it out. And then from there, we could really figure out the food thing of what's going to help, fulfill those deficiencies.
What about the cannabis oil? You had mentioned that to me earlier about that being part of your STEP program?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, cannabis is a known cancer killer. All the great studies now are being done in Israel. And we're seeing patient after patient using cannabis oil and their cancer going away. So it just works, and it just seems like a no-brainer for everyone. I'll talk more about children in a little bit. I'll save the cannabis oil for that, but I'm just saying it's working for us in many ways.
So there's detractors to every lifestyle choice, to every one of these different types of diets or plans, or even being a vegan, being as general as that after all this time, there's a lot of detractors. What would you say to your detractors? What are they saying to you, and then how do you answer that back to them?
You know, I worked with, one of the clients that comes to my mind immediately, one of his biggest, one of his biggest vices was sugar, carbs, and things of that nature. And for me, diets are, it's more lifestyle for me. The first 3 letters in the word diet are not really something I live by, and I'm trying to restore people's lives and in a transformative way. But I feel like that if you're going to take something away from someone, give them something to replace it with. So there's a lot of people out there, and sugar it's a big thing. And so if I have people coming to me and they're trying to, live a healthier lifestyle, I would say instead of your refined sugar or instead of this cookie, here's something you can have in place of that. So I just give them the tools that I know that they're going to be successful, because just simply removing it from them, they're more likely to, default. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest conversations is waste diversion. I think when people start to think about plant-based living, all right, cool, if I buy something out of the produce section or out of the farmer's market, is this something I can compost? Is this something that needs to be recycled? And how did that conversation roll in? I think that's what really opens up that next one, because dealing with people who live in urban communities, a lot of times there isn't access to vegan food or healthy options, and most of the time they have to create that. And there's that deep intergenerational conversations with grandmothers who are like already growing food in their backyards and are teaching their grandchildren that conversation. But I think to really deepen that is to start in the family, start at home. Of course, our family, we eat vegan at home, but at the same time, when I go to like family meals and dinners, like I'm always bringing something that they can try that's transformative, because at the same time, I want them to understand that plant-based medicines and plant-based foods are the best way to tackle climate change. And if we're thinking about the future and, protecting the future for young people, I've been addressing it that way, not just, through waste diversion and how to compost, but also like how growing the food literally is what we need to, put that carbon back into the soil, and that's a conversation to have, more than just the wellness.
Right, sure.
The biggest detractors I face are oddly in the medical profession. And they say that fruits and vegetables, what you eat, has no effect on cancer whatsoever. So this one gentleman I interviewed in Napa Valley got lymphoma. The doctor said, why don't you go home, let's see how your cancer progresses for 30 days, and then let's figure out a plan. So the gentleman went home. He immediately got rid of all inflammatories. So no meat, no dairy, no sugar, no gluten. Came back to his doctor with eating a plant-based diet for 30 days. Came back to his doctor. His lymphoma had been reduced by 70%.
Wow.
30 days, 70%, just on a plant-based diet. Wow. What do you think his doctor said? Okay, we start chemo in a week. There was no acknowledgement that, wow, if it reduced 70% in 30 days, what happens in the next 30 days? So the biggest shift we have to make, and it's happening, is helping the medical profession understand that, no, nutrition is a huge part of the disease equation.
Wow. Okay. Do chefs have a say, and how important do you think chefs are in influencing what we eat today?
Chefs create the menu. So, they have a huge influence. Not only that, but, they have a huge impact on the environment too, where they're sourcing the food from, if they're going to choose sustainably, if they're going to choose non-GMO or organic. So, yeah, chefs, they're the ones creating the menus. But even bigger, even more powerful than the chefs, the FDA, you know, the Food and Drug Administration. So I feel like it's a collective effort.
Right.
Yeah, I think it has to do a lot with, of course, chefs and film, you know. At the same time, like I said, like, you know, music is and art, literally, art is very influential. And so when I think about the fact that, yeah, if I want something that's not sustainable, if it's like comes from some rare, you know, village in Brazil, and it, like, you know, at the same time it's not sustainably harvested, it's not fair trade, yeah, that's gonna affect everyone. It's gonna affect not only the driver that had to bring it up, you know, up the mountain from California, you know what I mean, to Colorado. So I'm thinking about that traceable source. That's why localizing the conversation of food is very important. Can I bike there? Is this something that I can grow on my windowsill? I live in Colorado. People grow indoors all the time. But, you know, I think the conversation of plant-based medicines is really great. But how are we going to use that in our refrigerator? You know, when you open up your fridge, does it look like a morgue or does it look like a garden? That's the conversations I have with my friends and family, you know, and, you know, not everybody in the hood can grow. So, you know, putting it on your concrete, making hay bales out of like charcoal and like, you know, organic compost, and like literally you can like grow on concrete. I done seen people do it, and you don't need gardens. And I think that conversation is really what's shifting. Like, can chefs have access, let alone can people have access? Because when you're in the hood, sometimes that chef is just gonna be like, you know, whatever's in the corner store. And that conversation needs to shift by talking about urban agriculture.
Right, right. Okay. Anybody want to add anything?
I will add a little bit about chefs. I mean, I think that there's a lot of organic and farm-raised restaurants popping up, and you'll see some of these popular ways of eating showing up in restaurants. But one of the things is, at the same time, and I can imagine as a chef, there's that conflict there because you also want the food to taste good. So we've talked a lot about sugar, and I think that people kind of ignore that this could be an organic farm-raised chicken that you're eating, and it's wild rice that was grown out of this chef's farm, but what about the sugar that's in the sauce? And I think that things that taste good, I've tried to recreate a lot of things, pesto, things that like, I'm like, this is awesome, this is excellent, there's vegetables, there's this, that, but how much sugar is being hidden in those sauces, and also in your ingredients in the store. So you go and get salad dressing and it says organic across the front, but they change the name of sugar to kind of, it's like third or fourth ingredient, but you know, go and look at all the different names that sugar can fall under. There's sugar in almost every single sauce. So because of that, I order everything plain. And it might not taste as good, but I know that I'm getting, you know, when I'm out and about, I'm getting the best, cleanest way of eating, at least when I'm out, you know, traveling or in a restaurant.
Right. You know, Jeff, earlier when we spoke and we were talking about can we really mitigate the diseases of a modern society, we started talking about generational things, and you talked about epigenetics, and we started talking about the fact that I bring my parents' genetic, and just like you said, Laura, the genetic propensity for obesity, whatever else, but all of our parents are bringing to us our habits, our lifestyles, what they were educated to, and I mean, how can we break that cycle? Is the cycle able to be broken so that as the next generation of children are coming forward, that they then have a purer state of mind on eating habits and stuff? What do you think?
Yeah, so a big problem is that doctors like to say that cancer is genetic. It's taught in every medical school in the country, and it's been proven again and again that cancer is environmental or a metabolic disease, not genetic. And there's a new theory, it's not even a theory, it's a science, called epigenetics, which shows that it's not so much your genetics, it's how your genetics express themselves and how they interact with the environment. So if now you're introducing an environmental factor to your genetic predisposition, it renders your genetics sort of moot. They're not a problem anymore. If somebody has an MTHFR gene and they have trouble processing toxins, they can do more detox work, and suddenly that genetic problem is not a genetic problem anymore. So we do have the ability to change how our genetics affect us.
All right, let's parlay that question then into a question about children's nutrition, and why is it so important that nutrition, the spiritual health, the mental health, and the physical well-being of children is so rooted in their nutritional guidance?
Yeah, so the latest film that just came out that I made is called Flipping the Script. And this is about parents who are outraged over the fact that their children with leukemia or lymphoma were in remission after the first 10 to 30 days from chemotherapy, and then the doctor said, now we're going to do 2 to 4 more years of chemotherapy so the cancer doesn't come back. And the parents said, no, that's unacceptable. And so what they did is they got an attorney, they educated Child Protective Services, and when these doctors called Child Protective Services and said, go kidnap these children, these parents are bad parents, these parents educated CPS, got a new health team, and what these parents are doing for these kids are using nutrition, detox, and cannabis oil, and these children are thriving. And we now have clinical experience of children from anywhere from 6 months to 6 years that have been thriving. These are kids that were told, unless you do the 2 to 4 years of chemotherapy and have brain damage, organ failure, relapse, and possibly death, you're not going to survive. Well, it's not true. And so what's exciting right now is that children are thriving without drugs, and they're doing it through nutrition, detox, and cannabis oil.
There's a documentary called What the Health, and it's really interesting. It talks about autism, and I work with a lot of families who have an autistic child, and the FDA especially is ignoring the science and the research behind gluten sensitivity for these kids, sugar sensitivity, and I've seen it in so many cases I probably can't even count. If you take sugar away from these autistic kids, they're more calm. They can have a conversation. In that film, there was a 5-year-old girl who was nonverbal. They took all of it, gluten, sugar, dairy. They took really everything away except for organic. I think they were doing some organic-based meats, but either way, she was nonverbal for 5 years, and after a year of living this way, she could talk, she could speak again. And so I think that, they're really having a hard time defining what the prevalence of childhood obesity is these days, because there's so many people saying, well, it's genetic. But we do know that there's only a 4% chance that you have genetic obesity as an adult. And they're saying now that even children 30% of all children are considered obese. So it really kind of is that trickle down. It starts with the parents, it starts at school. And, we talked about this a little bit earlier. We were talking about, you were saying putting vegetables in French fry containers and stuff like that. But if you start them from 6 months when they can start eating solid food, and you give them vegetables and you keep trying different things and you put that right in front of them, they're little products of us. So they're going to eat what's in front of them. They're not going to starve themselves and just not eat. So I think schools too. I'm working with a school in a food-based program right now, and this is an organic food-based program, but they're putting it in plastic containers that go in the microwave or steamer. So that is leaching right into the food. So I think for these kids, like we as adults and youth, we have to be the proponents for these kids so this stops, and so our future generation isn't falling into the hands that we're in right now.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. I see a lot of that transforming. I saw in the panel the conversation of gentrification and how the fact that rent is too high, so you see a lot of people in urban communities purchasing cheap food. I hear a lot of times that, it's the people in the hood, they don't have access to recycling, and because all of their corner store food is packaged in Mylar bags, and all the vegan soul food restaurants in the hood use styrofoam, and they're not thinking about the ideas of sustainability and at the same time thinking about wellness. So it's really important. I'm featured in this short film called From Gangs to Gardens. It premiered at the ArcLight at the Hollywood Film Festival. It's currently on Revolt TV and Food Matters TV. The whole concept was talking about gang intervention and working with gangsters, because I used to gangbang. Literally, that's where I come from. So I come from a concept of community engagement, community activism, at the same time because you didn't have the Boy Scouts. So people who wanted to talk about how they can get involved in culture, now the best way to rep your hood is grow cabbage for it. Who has the best cabbage? Who has the best collard greens? And having set of breakdance battles, we can have growing battles and State Fair style, who got the biggest pumpkin. These conversations are really big. I think engaging with parents and children are very important. Because I wrote an album called The Produce Section, I have copies available after this panel for sale. But I literally decided that I needed to do more than just drop out. I'm called the produce section. So I started to perform in the produce section. I did a 5-city tour with Natural Grocers, which is a competitor of Whole Foods, but like, you know, they're more based in the Midwest. And they're like this natural grocery store chain. And me and my wife literally set up in the produce section doing culinary concerts because we understood that the fact that the parents don't feel normalized to the ideas of the requests of our students who are coming back home talking about, I want to go vegan because I watched this animal cruelty video. Oh, my teacher showed me how to make vegan fajitas out of mushrooms. Yo, let's try this at home. And they come back and they're like, oh, my parents won't give up the Kool-Aid. They say it's too expensive. Those conversations of not being able to afford the Vitamix, but they want, to get off healthcare. I'm like, well, healthcare looks like a blender. It looks like a juicer. It looks like a garden. Sometimes it looks like community engagement with fams and friends. So I think that conversation of using arts is definitely a really big one, but when we're talking about children, yes, they're the next purchasing demographic, and if we think about how we can use arts as a form of activism, we not only address climate change, obesity, at the same time, type 2 diabetes, but you already know what it is. We need to really focus on shifting the young minds, and it's really starting with culture, and the arts is the best way.
One second real quick. Let me gauge how many people are going to have questions. We've got 5 minutes left. Do you want to talk, or do you want to go right to questions?
We can go to questions.
All right, and you can answer the first one. This gentleman right here in the hat.
So I just wanted to know sort of how, because there's so much information out there. You talk about cannabis oil, are you referring to CBD? Because I'm not 100% clear.
Yeah, so in order to kill the cancer, we're finding that THC is useful. So my wife has a 1-to-1 ratio of THC and CBD in her cannabis oil.
So these sort of things, how do you combat, aside of, these sort of trends? You spoke about paleo and keto and people not even knowing why they are on these diets. And sort of how we are sort of this trendy society where it's like, oh, this whole thing about coconut oil, and then that like blows up and everybody's using that sort of thing, or these cannabis oils, and then you have people like their main method is to make money off of this, and so it kind of gets diluted, and then you get all these people who are like, well, I tried that, and this seems like a scam, and I'm getting all these different information. So I guess my question is, how do you sort of combat all of the information coming from everywhere, and a lot of people who aren't experts at all at this, that just hear one tidbit of information and then do that back out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say quickly, for me and for my wife, we just have to get to know ourselves. And then it doesn't matter what they're saying out there. It's like, what is going to help me thrive? I now know my body. I know how it works. I didn't used to. And so now it's just a matter of what's out there that can help me thrive that I know I need.
Okay. Anyone add into?
Well, I mean, definitely. You can go to my Instagram. I post pictures of all the time, basically talking about why there's a better and environmental impact on like when you eat plant-based. Some of them I definitely would say like the fact that deforestation is a really big issue. We're literally chopping down the breadth of our earth. There is a large acidic, element in our oceans right now. We can transform that by growing more kelp. I think by purchasing more kelp, there's a lot of dope plant-based recipes and like kelp recipes. I think this is a good conversation. But when I think about that, it goes there. It goes into the environment. And I ask like, what is the way you're eating? Is it good for you and is it good for the planet? That's the conversation.
Okay. Do anybody want to add in or go to another question? You guys?
I would add in really quick, along with knowing yourself, I think you need to look at the basics of the program and see if it's something that you can live by. I don't think anything should be done for a week or 2 weeks. I actually don't even think a month is long enough. It takes 21 days to make or break a habit, and I also think that you're not going to see enough in 30 days, especially if you're even if you don't have an ounce of weight to lose, but you just want to feel better. So I think that you need to kind of look at each of those programs and say, because I've had people that are like, I'll never be vegetarian, I'll never be vegan. That's fine, but if you're going to be a meat eater, that's fine too. But tell me why you want to know. Why do you want to do keto, and what do you know about it? And can you sustain it? Because if you're keto 3 days a week and you're vegetarian 4 days a week, and then next week you forget, you're going to gain weight and you're actually going to feel sick. So I think that it really takes, you got to look at each individual and talk to them about why do you want to make this change and what's it going to mean for you, and can you keep this for a long time, because it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And I actually don't even talk about the word diet. If someone like wants cake, eat cake on Tuesday night and eat great the other 29 days of the month or whatever, but it's not about like restricting your life, it's about a lifestyle. Truly.
We have time for one more. We need a succinct question. Who's got a succinct question? Succinct. All right, this nice lady waving her hand back there.
Hi, my name's Bethany, and I actually really appreciate you bringing up cannabis because I do work in the industry and have for 5 years. But my question is personal. I hear a lot about, obesity and weight loss around dieting and healthy living. And for me, that's not an issue. In fact, I actually have an issue with gaining weight and keeping weight on. And so for me, it's really tough to find resources that really help me to live healthy, because I could eat all the sugar and carbs all day and not move a pound. But for me, it's more about
Aren't we upset at that? I know I am.
I'll feel horrible, and my mood will be off, and my hormones will become imbalanced. And so, what advice do you have as far as resources for somebody like me?
Good question.
Oh, okay. I'm actually the same way. Growing up, it didn't matter what I ate, and it's kind of still that way. I think for me, with my weight gaining process, it just was making sure I was eating enough in general, and remember that 1,500 calories can be different over here as opposed to over here, so making sure that those calories are nutritious. And for me, it required more physical activity to put on the weight, and healthy oils, avocados and things of that nature, and that's what worked for me. So that's the direction I can put you in.
Thank you, guys. We have to, I'm getting the signal and back. We have to cut it short. They got a quick turnaround. But you guys have been great, and you can come up and see the panel for a few minutes and ask additional questions. But thanks for the panel. Let's give them a great round of applause. They're fantastic. Thank you all.